Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mondays with Mendy. Today we're going to cover a very important subject, and that is birthdays. Everybody has one, and the question is, are they a meaningful day besides for receiving well wishes from your Facebook friends, which has become a big part of birthday celebrations, and there's even competitions that are created as to who gets more birthday mentions on Facebook when it comes around. But is there a deeper significance to a person's birthday? Is there a religious or spiritual significance to our birthday? That's the question that we're going to be covering in today's discussion. As always, we're going to be using one concept from the weekly Torah portion to illuminate our conversation and shed light on an important topic. So, why is the beginning of your life important? And why is it important to celebrate that beginning every single year? It's one thing to say a child is born, and therefore there's some new significance because there's a new life here on earth. But what difference does it make if you're now 41 instead of 40, or 30, or 89 instead of 88? And why should your birthday have such meaning? Simply because it's the anniversary on which you were born 80 years ago, or 30 years ago, whatever the date was. So there's a story told about a man who's looking for a gift for his wife, whose wife's celebrating her birthday. And as you know, you must get your spouse a gift on her birthday, or you are in the doghouse. So he's going shopping with his friend, and Harry finds this beautiful diamond ring, and he shows it off to his friend, and he asks his friend, "What do you think? Do you think Denise, my wife, is going to like it?" So Josh turns to Harry and says, "Harry, I thought that Denise wanted a new 4x4, a new all-wheel drive 4x4 for her birthday." And Harry turns back to Josh and he says, "You're right, Josh, but I can't find a fake Land Rover." So sometimes when birthdays or ceremonies or occasions become so ingrained in our society, we do them as a matter of circumstance. It's something that you have to do, and sometimes that demeans the value a little bit. And birthdays are probably the same thing. The fact that we know we have to celebrate this day and you have to buy a gift makes it more of a responsibility and an onus than something we do lovingly and joyfully. It takes a little bit away of the special feelings of the day so that it becomes something that society dictates to us from external pressures rather than something we do on our own internally. And that's one of the downsides of the birthday society that exists today. So what's the significance from a spiritual or religious perspective on birthdays? And is there any Jewish relevancy to one celebrating their birthday? If you look back historically, you won't find very much mention of the concept of birthdays in Jewish society, although in recent times, and by recent I mean in the early 1900s, when some of the chief rabbis in Israel, and again, this is before the formation of the State of Israel, but Jewish people were already living there during that time, and they already had their own chief rabbinate. And when the rabbis did celebrate their birthdays, we find that there was great pomp and circumstances, parties that were celebrated. Other rabbis sent the rabbi celebrating their birthday gifts and special cakes. And so we see here we have very pious, spiritual individuals that put a lot of significance and value into their birthdays. And it's funny, you can see the little nuanced differences between the way the Ashkenazic rabbi celebrated his birthday and the way the Sephardic rabbi celebrated his birthday. But we do see that there was some circumstance to that. But if you go back in historical times, biblical times even, you find that there isn't very much talk about birthdays. King Solomon, who's known as probably one of the smartest men that ever lived, composed a lot of his knowledge, his wealth of wisdom, into a couple of different books that are included in the scriptures, namely the book Koheles, Ecclesiastes, and the book Proverbs or Mishlei. And he writes the following. He says, "A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of one's birth." So seemingly, King Solomon's perspective is that a birthday really isn't a day for celebration. Your death, your anniversary of death, now that's a day to really sink your teeth into. But the day that you were born, there isn't very much to celebrate. And the commentaries on this verse talk about what King Solomon is trying to say, and they explain it in greater detail to the following. A person is born. They're a clean slate. And while, yes, there's an excitement about the opportunity that lays ahead for the new child that's born, we really have no idea what's going to take place. We don't know what that child's going to accomplish. We don't know if they're going to make the right decisions, the wrong decisions, if their life is going to be meaningful and valuable, or simply a waste of human resources, a waste of human potential. We have no idea. It's all yet to be determined. And while that's exciting, the opportunity is exciting, how much more celebratory are we on the day of someone's passing, when we can look back and say, look what this person achieved, look what they accomplished, look what they contributed to society, look at the value that their life gave back to their family and their friends and their community. And the analogy that they give in explaining King Solomon's verse, King Solomon's statement, is the analogy of two boats in a harbor. You have one ship that's leaving the harbor, and one ship that's coming into the harbor. Now, typically, when does everybody celebrate? The greater celebration is when the ship leaves the harbor. People are excited about where it's going, etc. But it would make more sense logically and rationally to celebrate when the ship comes back into the harbor, because now you know that the journey was successful, and pleasurable and enjoyable because they have returned after they've left. That would make more sense. And yet we find that it's just the opposite. People celebrate more when the ship leaves than when it comes. And the same thing is probably in life. When we have birthdays, everyone is excited, joyful. And yet when we have someone that's passed and an anniversary of passing, we tend to be saddened and more sorrowful. And the question is why? Why don't we get that sense of excitement and joy from seeing what a person accomplished with their life? Just like King Solomon is alluding to. Why does it seem to be such a downer? And if that's the case, maybe birthdays really aren't a moment for celebration, according to Jewish tradition. The other negative aspect of birthdays is that in the 5 books of Moses, the core part of the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, the only reference to a birthday is Pharaoh's birthday. Doesn't talk about Aaron's birthday, it doesn't talk about Moses' birthday, really. The only birthday it talks about in the 5 books of Moses is King Pharaoh. It says in the book of Genesis that it was on the 3rd day of Pharaoh's birthday that he made a feast for all his servants, and the cupbearer and the baker were among the servants there. And that's the story that's related about Joseph. Joseph is languishing in prison. He interprets the dreams that these 2 servants of Pharaoh have successfully. And then later on, Pharaoh calls these servants up on his birthday, and he issues a verdict in their 2 cases exactly according to the way that Joseph had predicted and prophesied. So again, what do we see? That birthdays were not necessarily a Jewish concept. We don't see any connection to birthdays from some of the Jewish leadership. Only Pharaoh. So maybe birthdays are just an Egyptian thing. Maybe they're only a Roman or Greek tradition, as we know that they used to celebrate birthdays, and there's evidence of that in historians' writings. But we do not see any references to Jewish birthdays throughout the course of history, over 1,000 years. Very, very little reference. So how is it that today society has adopted this tradition to such a degree when historically Judaism really never celebrated it? When you create moments in your lifetime that are important, when you create occasions in your life that have significance and meaning, you often have to understand what the core and the basis of that occasion is, what the underlying inspiration is to celebrate that moment. And while birthdays might be an opportunity for us to share presents and gifts, and something that society has created as a norm, if you see underlying meaning and significance to this date, it oftentimes has to translate into something spiritually as well. Because if you believe, as I do, that there's spiritual significance to life is the undercurrent of what you celebrate in an external way, then there has to be spiritual significance as well to the birthday. And the trouble is, we don't find it. We don't see it. So how do we find greater meaning when we celebrate our birthdays, beyond just Facebook wishes and gifts, maybe the occasional party? If it's a big birthday, maybe you get a trip. How do we find something more meaningful than that? And before we explain that, I have a question for everyone. What do George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Christopher Columbus all have in common? The answer? Their birthdays are all holidays. So is your birthday a holiday as well? And when I say the term holiday, I mean, is it a holy day? Is your birthday a day of greater meaning and significance for you in your life? Yes or no? If it's just about a party and a cake, our discussion ends here. But if you find your birthday to be more than just cake and candy, if you find it to have greater meaning and significance, what is it? And where do you find it? Today we're celebrating the month of Adar, the Hebrew month of Adar, which is the happiest month in the Jewish calendar. The reason that it's the happiest month in the Jewish calendar is that this is the month when we celebrate Purim. Purim, of course, is not just a holiday for little children to dress up, as some people believe, but rather a celebratory day in the Jewish calendar, which reminds us of the story that took place with Esther and Mordecai in ancient Persia. It's such an exciting and wonderful holiday that it actually transforms the entire month of celebration into a happy month. The whole month of Adar, the whole Hebrew month when we celebrate this holiday, is known as the happiest month in the Jewish calendar, to the point where it says that if someone has an impending court case or some kind of serious occasion, they should try to delay it to this month because of the happiness and the good fortune that the Jewish people have during this month. So it's a very special month. Why is that? Why is this month so special? What's the background that gives it this great significance? So to understand the relationship between the month of Adar and the story of Purim, you have to look at what transpired in the events that led to the Purim celebration. You're going back a long time to when the Persian Empire basically was ruling most of the land, especially where the Jewish people lived in Babylonia, Mesopotamia, Israel. Persians were in charge. And at that time, there rises to power a man named Haman. Haman does not like the Jewish people. And by saying not like them, he doesn't like the fact that they exist, period. He doesn't want any Jews to exist, period, end of story. Whatever means he can find to achieve this goal and objective, he will use. If it means literal eradication, no problem. Destroying their identity, no issue. Whatever it takes, he wants to destroy the Jewish existence. Eventually, he convinces the king that they are a strange people. That's the terminology that he uses. There are strange people that live in your land. You don't need them either. So let me take them off of your hands. I'll take care of this. And I'll even pay you for it. That's what Haman tells the king. The king's name is Ahasuerus. Now, Haman has to find a day when he will actually have the king order the Jewish people to be annihilated. So he's in search for the right day. And Haman was a superstitious person. He believed in fortune and astrology and so on and so forth. So he's looking for a day that will play well relative to the Jewish people's fortune. And of course, the Jewish people have a rich history at this time already. So there are a lot of great occasions on the calendar that bode well for the Jewish people. This month has this date, or this month Sarah was born, and Abraham did this on this month. So he tries to stay away from any day, any month on the calendar that has positive days relative to the Jewish people. Then he comes to the month of Adar. And the Hebrew month of Adar is different than all the other months. Why? There's no major day that happens. There's no major holiday, major celebration, major occasion that should bring good fortune for the Jewish people. So it says, that's the day I will choose as the day to exterminate the Jewish people. And after further research, he finds out not only does it not have any positive days, it actually has a negative day. What is the negative day on the Hebrew month of Adar? It's the day that Moses died. Okay. So Moses dies on the 7th day of Adar, and he sees this, and he's excited. He says, this is a confirmation that this is the right day for me to choose for the king's decree to wipe out the Jewish people. The 7th day of Adar is actually a day of sadness for the Jewish people. I will use that power to get rid of them. So again, what do we see here? It seems to be that the day of passing is indeed a saddened day, and that's the power that he's going to use to impact his terrible plot to get rid of the Jewish people. What he didn't know, Haman made one major miscalculation. He didn't know that the 7th of Adar, the month of Adar, is also the month when Moses was born. It turns out that Moses was born and passed on the same day. Now, Haman was very familiar with Jewish tradition. He knew that Moses passed on this day. He didn't know that he was born on this day. And this throws off his entire calculation, because now it turns out that the month of Adar is not just a neutral month. It's not a negative month for the Jewish people, but rather it's a positive month for the Jewish people, because it's the day that Moses was born. Groucho Marx said about his birthday, he said once that, I must confess, I was born at a very early age. Groucho Marx, and I think this is often true for a lot of comedians, that comedy allows them to express a certain truth about life that we find difficult to put into words. Comedy as a way of cutting through some of those, cutting through some of what society says we can say, we can't say, difficult subjects, complicated matters. Comedy gives it to us blunt, pure and simple. So here we have Haman, who's so excited, he thinks he's got the perfect day for the story to annihilate the Jewish people, and it turns out it's the birthday of Moses, and that throws off the entire calculation. Why? We just finished saying that birthdays aren't really that special of a day. So if the day someone passes is more significant than the day when they're born, why would the fact that Moses is born on this month make any difference in the good fortune of the Jewish people? It's the day he passed, that should be enough. The day he's born should have no relevance whatsoever. And why is this story, his birth and his passing on the same day in the same month, it raises the status of the entire month to make the entire month one of the happiest months of the entire Jewish calendar? What's really taking place here that transformed this month into such a special month, greater than all other months on the calendar? So, human life is constantly evolving, constantly changing. In fact, that's the one constant you have throughout life, that change is always going to happen. They say that change is inevitable, except from vending machines. But generally, change is one of the constants that we have. You're changing when you're a child. If you're a parent, you see your kids every day, they look different. Every month, they're trying new things. You change as you go through adolescence, huge changes. Teenager becomes a young adult becomes a middle-aged adult, becomes a senior, and so on. And these are not only physical changes, but physiological changes. You think differently, you are differently. You always are changing. One thing remains the same. At the core, I'm still MENDY. I was MENDY when I was 3, when I was 10, when I was 20, 30, I'm still MENDY. You're Alex, you're Jack, you're Stacy, you're Stephanie. You have the same name. And that's supposed to be reflective of the fact that you have the same identity. Essentially, you're still the same person. You were given an essence, you were given a soul when you were born, that Judaism believes is distinct to who you are, designed for you because you have a unique mission to accomplish here on earth. So that essence, that remains the same. The external trappings of your essence, those will change. Your emotions will change, your intellect will change, the way you live your life might change, your mannerisms, all of that may change, your language may change. But your essence, who you are, essentially, that stays the same. And the same is true of our nation, our people. We've gone through many different changes over the course of history, ups and downs, forwards, backwards. The Jewish people lived in Israel, then they lived in Babylonia, then it was Persia, then they moved all over the world through the diaspora, we were a wealthy people, we were a poor people, wealthy again, we had more influence, less influence. All of those external trappings of the Jewish people have changed dramatically throughout history. But essentially, who we are as a people, our identity, our core identity, as a people chosen for a unique path and a unique mission to lead their lives a certain way, that hasn't changed. That, for the most part, has stayed the same. Where does this get expressed? This idea of an essential identity, where does it get expressed? Not in the holidays of Rosh Hashanah, not in the holidays of Yom Kippur, not in the month of Passover when we celebrate the Exodus from Egypt. These are all important months. These are all months with tremendous holidays, great significance to the Jewish people. But the essential identity of the people is not expressed in those months. Rather, the essence of who we are is expressed in the month of Adar. Why is it expressed in the month of Adar? Because this is the month when Moses was born. What happens when Moses is born? What happens when any person is born? When a person is born, all that exists is their essence. You're right, there's nothing to celebrate as far as their accomplishments and achievements here on life. If you are celebrating someone's accomplishments and achievements, you would celebrate that on the day they pass. That would make more sense. You look back at what they did here on earth, the family, the business, the professional, the personal, the communal, and that's what you celebrate. You give long eulogies, we name buildings after them, beautiful tombstones that highlight all of what a person contributed to society with their time here on earth. So if the way you celebrate a human being's existence is based purely on their accomplishments and achievements, a birthday is not a day for celebration. It's not a day for celebration. There is nothing that they've accomplished and achieved yet here on earth. However, on a birthday, you have one essential quality which you don't have in any other day of the year. The identity of who that person is. When you were given life, you were given an identity. It had nothing to do with what you accomplished and achieved. It was at your core, at your essence. And therefore, every day on your birthday, you reminisce, you reflect, you reconnect with who you are essentially. Not with your accomplishments and achievements, not with what you've done and where you're going, but as a core, who are you? That's what you celebrate on your birthday. So therefore, the first birthday is super exciting. You were given an identity for the first time. But your 10th birthday is also exciting because you reflect and go back to, who am I? Who was I when I was created 10 years ago? Am I in touch with that core essential identity today? And the same question is posed at 20 and 30 and 50 and 80. Every day you go back to that essential identity, who you were on the day that you were born. That's what takes place on a birthday. That's what is so monumental in the month of Adar. That in the month of Adar, we go back to who we are essentially as the Jewish people. It's not a question of what the Jewish people accomplished and achieved. Because if you look at the story of Purim, Haman didn't have a problem with the Jewish people decided to give up their Judaism. He said, listen, if you give up being Jewish completely, I don't just mean religious, because a lot of the Jewish people at the time were not religious, but they were culturally Jewish. Or their gastronomy was Jewish. As we know, there's 100 different ways to categorize someone that's Jewish today. Some people say the fact that he labels bagels and lox. Some people say it has to do with who I associate, the social circles I'm in. For other people, it's the morality and ethics. Other people, it's their religion. Some people, it's spiritual, it's faith. There's so many different ways to categorize it. Haman said, you know what? I don't like any of them. But as long as you stop identifying as a Jew, that's fine. I won't kill you. I don't care if you buy into another religion. I just don't want to hear the word Jewish anymore, period. End of story. What did the Jewish people respond? How did they respond to this offer that was made to them? They said no, categorically, N-O. Whether they were religious or not, the vast, vast majority of people said, we are not going to change who we are. They didn't say we're not going to change what we do. Maybe they did celebrate Judaism, maybe they didn't. Maybe they did more traditions, maybe they did less. What they said was our identity as a people, that is not on the bargaining table. We were born this way, and we will stay this way till the day that we die. Essentially, they celebrated the birth of the Jewish people. They celebrated the existence of the Jewish people in a pure existential manner, without any accomplishments or achievements attached to it. And the fact that that's the month when Moses was born only reinforced this idea. It reinforced the idea that you are a people with an identity, totally separate from what you accomplish and achieve. That is secondary. And yes, we have to grow in our accomplishments and push ourselves to achieve more and more as we go through life. And the same has been the story of the Jewish people. We've always worked to accomplish something as a community. But at our core, our identity is not changing. And that's what takes place on Purim. That's what takes place in this month of Adar. That's what Haman miscalculates. He doesn't understand that the Jewish people might look different. They might act differently one from the next. But you can never take away their core identity as a people. Just like Moses was born on this date, regardless of whether he died years later or not, his core identity always stays the same. That's what's celebrated in this month. And that's why it's the happiest month on the Jewish calendar. Because if you look at a human's accomplishment and achievements, if you look at the story of the Jewish people and what they accomplished and what they achieved, it's a sad story and a happy story. And sometimes the sad parts can bring you down more than the happy parts can lift you up. Because we've gone through so many changes, tumultuous and difficult, catastrophic periods in our history as a people. You can really get brought down by that. If, on the other hand, you choose to focus on our identity, our essence, now that's amazing. Because that essence, that identity, has continued to exist and thrive over 2,000 years under all of these difficult circumstances. That's the happiness that we get on Purim. Not from what we see externally, but what we get internally. And that's what you celebrate on a birthday. A birthday is a special and meaningful day, not because of your accomplishments and achievements, because we still don't know. That can go either way. You could still ruin all of it. On a birthday, we celebrate who you are, who your core identity is. That's what you celebrate when you give your wife a gift, or your child a gift, or your parents a gift, when you get together and you have well wishes, and you make a special dinner or party. It's nothing to do with the accomplishments and achievements. It's the core identity of the human being. That's what's so special about a birthday. And if that's the perspective that you take, then your birthday will become more than just cake and candies. It will become an opportunity for you to reflect on who you are and whether you live your life every day in accordance with that essential identity that existed the day you were born. This day you were born 33 years ago. Do you live your life in accordance with that essential identity that was given to you 33 years ago? Or have you moved further and further away from it every year that you live here on earth? That's what you should be asking yourself on your birthday. And then, just like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Christopher Columbus, your birthday will also be a holiday. It will be your personal holiday. It'll be one of your holiest days of the year, because it'll be the day that you get reintroduced or reconnected with your essence as a human being. So as we celebrate Purim, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, on Sunday, we're going to be celebrating the holiday of Purim. We're going to be mindful that this is the day that reminds us as a people who we are essentially. And in a personal, individual way, we get reminded of that every year on our birthday. For those of you celebrating your birthdays soon, happy birthday. And for those of you not celebrating your birthdays, don't wait till the next birthday. Start asking yourself that question today, whether or not you are in touch with your identity as a human being, your identity spiritually, and whether you live your life on a daily basis in accordance with that. And then we don't have to wait for our birthdays to reinstitute a new beginning for each and every one of us. Thank you for joining me today. As always, feel free to email me any and all questions to askmendy@gmail.com. Please check our website, ChabadSouthTampa.com, for all of our upcoming events, starting with our amazing Purim party that's going to be 2 weeks from yesterday, Sunday on Purim at Ceviche Tapas Bar. It's Purim in the stadium. Wonderful, wonderful sports-related food and entertainment. We hope to see you then. Also, keep in mind that Passover is less than 2 months away, and if you need a Seder, we've got one for you. We look forward to celebrating all the holidays together with you. Next Monday, we will talk about gratification, a look at life's simple pleasures. So for those of you that still have pleasures and do like to gratify yourself, the 99% of you, I hope you'll tune in next Monday at 12 o'clock. Have a great day.